Today let's talk a little bit more about rendering, about different types of light, and more about the Arnold renderer that comes with Maya. For that, let's create a little scene here. So let's create a plane. We're going to use this plane as our ground. Then we're going to create a cube. I'm going to make this cube a little bit bigger. And let's put this around here. Let's create a sphere. Let's make this sphere bigger. And let's put this around here. And let's create a cone. And let's make this bigger too. Something around here. Now let's turn on Hypershade and let's create some basic materials here. I'm gonna create a Arnold shader. It's gonna be a AI standard surface, and I'm gonna create 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then I'm gonna give this different presets and different colors. Let's see. The first one I could be, I don't know, something more like rubber. So we can use this on the ground, and we can give this kind of brownish color. Like this, and it's gonna be the first one, and we're gonna call this brown. And we're gonna apply this to the material. Then we're gonna get a car paint 50%. Let's change the color to a blue. Let's apply this one. Call this blue. And this one we're gonna get a let me think about a gold preset. Make this a little bit more yellowish. And I'm gonna apply this to the cone. And the last one could be a car paint metallic 50%. This one's gonna be a green, but more of a dark green. And we're gonna put this on the cube and go back to my brown. Make this brown a little bit stronger. There we go. Let me save this scene. Module 3. Let's call this intro render. Okay, everything's so now we can talk about rendering. So in 3D animation, render refers to the point in the pipeline where we get everything that we created in this virtual background here, and we send to a renderer engine to collect all the information and create the final image, because everything you're seeing here so far is just an approximation. This is not the final version. Even when you turn on the renderer like the Arnold preview, is still not the final version. The final version is when you get the final render of the image. So Maya comes with different renderers. If you click here to the left of the Hypershade, you have the render settings, and we can see different renderers we have. We have the Maya software, which is the original renderer of Maya, very old, no one uses anymore. You have Maya hardware that used to be the old viewport of Maya. Maya hardware 2.0, which is what we're seeing here, the viewport that we use to create the scenes and everything. You can render with this because this can be useful if you need like a super fast preview. In this case here, I have V-Ray, but this does not come with Maya. And finally, we have Arnold Renderer, which is the current standard renderer for Maya. Arnold used to be a separate software. Autodesk bought it some years ago and integrated with Maya. You can still get Arnold for some other software like 3ds. Actually, 3ds Max comes with Arnold too, but you can buy Arnold separately for Cinema 4D, Blender, and some other software. It's very powerful renderer, very realistic. It is called a brute force renderer because it does not try to cheat. It really tries to simulate how light reacts in real life to create your final render. So you can create very beautiful images. It's used a lot in Hollywood, in big Hollywood productions. The con of Arnold, that is not that super artistic friendly, I would say. In comparison to V-Ray that I have here, Octane, I would say Arnold, it's a little bit more complicated to use, but it's not super complicated. So let's review like the main things you need here to know in the render settings. The common is going to be common to any render engine. Here you can select the image format you're gonna render. We are gonna mostly be using JPEG or PNG. I recommend JPEG. Quality 100%. You can put the name here of the scene or image you're gonna be rendering. If you don't have a name here, Maya is gonna use the name of your saved project. If you have this here, the frame animation extension, this is super important. The first option is when you wanna render just a still image. So it's gonna be the name of your image dot the extension, either JPEG, PNG, or one of the other ones. If you wanna render an animation, you have to change this. You have to change to some of the other options here. I recommend using the last one or the second to last one. So for example, the second to last one is going to be the name of the project, and then you're going to have the frame number dot the extension. The frame padding is how many numbers you're going to have. So for example, the frame 1 is going to be 0001. You could, if you want one more 0, you put 5 here, you're going to be 00001. Here, frame range, you can select the start frame and the end frame. For example, here we have 200 frames, but it's set up to render only to 10. We could put 200 here and it would render everything. Renderable cameras, you can select the different cameras you want to render. Here we're just using the standard perspective render, but we can create extra renders, extra render cameras. Image size is where you get the resolution. By default, Maya gets a very small resolution here, is HD 5040. By the way, nowadays this is not considered high definition, but back in the early 2000s that was kind of accepted as a small version of high definition television. So in our case, most of the time we're going to be using something a little bit bigger. We're going to be using at least HD 1080, and then you can change here with the 9020 by 1080. You can, this resolution 72, you never change this unless you want to render something for printing. Then you can change this to 300 or 600, but for video it's always going to be 72. Okay, those are like the common scenes for this applies to any renderer. Then you have specific stuff for Arnold. Before we check Arnold renderer, let's go to the system. You can change if you're gonna render with the CPU or the GPU. The GPU is only available if you have a PC with Windows and if you have an NVIDIA RTX 200 or RTX 300. Any other configuration, it won't work. So in Mac, you cannot use the GPU. So the GPU makes the render much faster, but it is still not full featured. It has way more bugs than the traditional normal Arnold. So, and because we're using Macs on the classroom, let's keep this at CPU. Then you have a bunch technical stuff, the way he construct the scene interactively. We're not gonna mess with this. One thing you can change is the My integration. You can click enable swatch render. So when we are in Hypershade, Arnold can actually show like the little thumbnails here. So now we, instead of seeing that A, we see the color of the material. Then let's go back to Arnold renderer. So the main settings here are the sampling. This reflects on how much rays are going to be hitting to create the illusion of light bouncing like in real life. The default is 3. We can crank this up, but not that much. Don't try to go more than 6, but 3 to begin is good. And you can do individual increments here if you want less noise in the diffuse, less noise specular. So the less the minor the number, more noise you're gonna have in the image. The bigger the number, less noise you're gonna have in the image, but you're gonna take more time to render. So that's basically what you need to know about the setting up to render an image with a little bit more depth than we talked before. And now let's talk about the different lights you have in Arnold. So let's start here in the rendering shelf with the Maya light. Those are the lights that come with Maya since the earlier versions, like 20, 15 years ago. They were originally created for the Maya renderer, not for the current Arnold renderer. But some of them do work with Arnold, so it's good for us to know which ones you can still use on Arnold, even though most of the time you want to work with the Arnold lights. We can find here in Arnold shelf. But let's review the ones in Maya first. The first one that is useful is this one here, which is the directional light. The directional light is gonna create a parallel rays. So this was originally created to simulate the sun, and you can get a kind of good approximation of the sun doing this, because even though in real life the sun is not totally parallel in terms of light rays, but because the sun is so far away from Earth, in practical terms, the rays are almost in parallel. So you can simulate this, approximate this with a directional light. Very simple controls here. You have controls of shadows, etc. But we're not going to be using this much for the simple reason we have more advanced forms of simulating the sun in Arnold. But it's good to know that you have this option here. Then you have the second one, which is the point light. Point light also works with Arnold. The only thing you really have to crank the intensity to see anything. So even 10 is not good. Let's go 100 and then it gets a little bit better. This is very good. Point light, it was a very common type of light until, I don't know, 10 years ago. It's very easy to use, easy to position, and Useful when you're trying to fake some real light with a more simple light setup. The problem with a point light, it is that it's not realistic at all in real life. You don't have any light that only comes from one point. Usually the light comes from one area. So you can still use this. I recommend using a point light when you're trying to fix little problems with the lighting in your image, and you're not worried about being like super realistic. So okay, this is the point light, and another one you can use is the spotlight. Spotlight, as the name implies, it simulates a spotlight, but again, it's not a very realistic spotlight because the light comes only from one point in space, which is usually not how it would work in real life. So I don't kind of recommend this. You can simulate this with some other Arnold lights. So of the Arnold lights that we know, the Maya lights that you should know about and maybe use, probably just the directional light and the point light. The spotlight, not very useful, and the area light, we actually have a Arnold area light. So let's move to the Arnold light here. The first one is the Arnold area light. So it works just like the one in Maya, but it's more precise, more physically accurate. You do have to crank up a little bit here. I think we need so much. As you can see, like the light distribution of the Arnold light is much more realistic. You don't have that hard shadow, and you have a more pleasing look. The nice thing of the area shadow, you can change the types of areas here. You can go from a quad to a cylinder or to a disc. The disc is pretty good to simulate a spotlight, but a more realistic one because the light coming from an area like would be in real life. So that's the area light in Arnold. You are gonna be using this a lot. So let's delete this. The second one is the mesh light. This one works a little bit different. Let's turn off the Arnold preview for a while. Let me duplicate this little cube here, and I'm gonna go back to the renderer, and I'm gonna click the mesh light. Now looks what is gonna happen here. And so basically Arnold is using the mesh that I selected as the source for my light. Again, you need to crank this up a little bit to see the effect, and we can make the light visible. So you see that we actually have this glowing cube here working as your light. This is a very, very useful light in Arnold because you can create very realistic setup. So if you have like a street light, if you have the lights of a car or anything like that, you can actually make the object as your light source. The reflection is very realistic. It reproduces the source of the light. So very, very useful light type in Arnold. Okay, so let's delete my cube. So I delete the cube. I don't have the light anymore. So moving on, we have the photometric light. I'm not going to be talking about the photometric light because this is more for architectural visualization and interior design, where you can create the photometric light, and then you can put a photometry file that comes from different manufacturers of professional light, and then you can reproduce the light pattern and design precisely in 3D. This is like super useful if you're working in ArcViz, but that's not the point of this course. This course is more about animation for entertainment, so I'm not gonna waste our time here, but it's good to know that this exists. And then we are gonna go to our sky dome light, which is very, very useful. So you click here, the sky dome, boom, we get this gray sphere around our scene, and this red illuminates everything. So the dome itself is a light. Very realistic one, and this one is useful to simulate sky. It's not just for sky. We actually have a sky object here, which I'm gonna be talking soon. In this case, you can put an image, a 360 image of any different environment here, and it's gonna be used both as a background and the light source. So let's do this, see how we can play with this. We go here to color, and we create a file, and let's select a file here. Texture, environment. I have two, maybe this or this. I'm gonna select this, like this here, a little bit darker, and boom, have this nice background with this nice light, just with the dome light. You can, this is still a dome, you can rotate this, and it's gonna change the direction of the light. It's very subtle. You can make this more intense, you can make this stronger. You can change the exposure. And you can also use the light without showing the background. So for example, you like the light, but you don't like this background. Maybe you wanna put another one. So you come here in the visibility on camera, you just turn this to 0. And let me unselect. It was showing because I was selecting. If you select, it shows again, but without selecting on the outliner, it's gone. But the light, it is still here. We still get the nice light without seeing the background. If you want to see the background again, just put the visibility on 1. You can put any different, any of the most common formats like JPEG, PNG, etc. But if you put a HDR image, which is a high dynamic image, the light will be even more realistic, because a high dynamic image, it will contain more information about the light, the real light that was captured, and then you get a more realistic light for your scene. So let's delete this one here. So we still have two different Arnold lights. The second to last is the portal. We're not going to be talking about this one. This is very specific for ArcViz, architectural visualization. It's something that you put on a window to filter the light that comes from the sun and create a more realistic reproduction in the interior, in any interior scene. But frankly, there's a very specific thing. I don't want you to bother about this anymore in this class. Let's talk about the last one, which is super important. We already used this once, which is the sun, the physical sky that comes with the sun. So let me click here the Arnold render again, and as we tumble around, we see we have this nice sky, and we even have a sun there. If you notice here in the outline, even though I created a physical sky, the name is the same name of the sky dome. So why is that? The reason is that the sky dome, when you create a physical sky, you're actually creating a sky dome light, and Arnold is putting a special shader inside the color channel. So let's click here. Oh, by the way, you notice the sky goes away, becomes black every time I click here. I don't know, it's kind of bug in Arnold for Maya, the way to get rid of this, because we need to change here and see the result in real time, is to just change from shaded to wireframe. And now, if you're selected, you're still gonna see this guy. So okay, as I was saying, we have the same settings that we have a Sky Dome, everything the same here on the right. And as we did before in the color, we have something plugged here, but instead of being a static image like I did before, this is a dynamic simulation of a physical sky. So you can change a lot of things here. You can change, of course, you can change the intensity, so the sky can become really, really bright. We can change, but inside here, we can change the turbidity. Turbidity is like the atmosphere is stronger, is like thicker in the place, so the light is gonna travel, is gonna have like resistance of the air. If you see in the background, you have like kind of fog. That's what turbidity does. You can change the ground albedo, which is the color of the ground. I could put, for example, something like this. It isn't gonna change what you see here. It's gonna change the reflection you see in the light. You can change the elevation. So this is pretty much changing the time. So because it's changing the elevation of the sun. So let's look up at the sun here. So there's our sun. If I change the elevation, I changed where the sun is, and we change the look. If we go down here, it becomes night, or like early down, and you get some very nice, interesting effects here. Let's go down here and almost night. And likewise, if you go like in the middle of elevation here, it's like midday is noon. So it's really up there. And of course, you can change not just the elevation, but you can change the rotation, what is called the azimuth. So you can move this right and left, and the shadows will change accordingly, as you can see here. And then, of course, you can change the intensity here. Boom, as we did, not in the shader, but on the light itself. So this is gonna be used a lot in our class. This is a very easy way of you to create a realistic sky in Arnold. And finally, we can play with this. We can do both. For example, I can have this sky. Okay, I like the sky here. I'm gonna use because I want to use the light of the sky, but I don't want to see this background. I want to see a different background. So I can come here and I can go into visibility, camera, and turn this to 0. So what happens, I still have the light of the sky, but it's black there. Then I can create a new dome light, sky dome light. And now I'm gonna create a file, and I'm gonna put another image there. So for example, I'm gonna put this panorama here. But I don't want to use this light. I want to use the light, only the light of the sky. So I'm gonna click here and I'm gonna keep the visibility of the camera 1, but everything else here I'm gonna turn 0. So now I have the light that comes from the sky, but I have this different image in my background. So you can play around with a lot of things. Keep in mind when you're using both the sky or the physical sky or the sky dome, you can still use the other Arnold lights. So for example, I can still create an area light and put in direction of my objects. Let's make this much stronger. And they're still gonna affect the object. So you can, the thing here is the challenge of 3D here is pretty similar to real life photography or cinematography. It's about creating your vision, playing with the different lights and the different setups you can create in this virtual studio, because that's what Maya is. Maya's basically a virtual studio. It's basically a mix between a film or photography studio with a workshop. It's a place where you can create the object, and then you are gonna take snapshots, illuminate, just like you would do in a real studio. So I think that's a quick introduction about rendering and lights in Arnold. And now let's jump to actually texture and light our object.